Hi, my name is Bob Horn, and this is the Beyond Beginner series. I'd like to talk to you today about becoming a better developer by using best practices. So we want to talk about being able to recognize beginner code and how to turn that beginner code into better code. We want to talk about why that code is now better. What has that done for us? And we certainly want to talk about what do you get out of it. We'll also look at some code about implementing business rules with and without polymorphism. And on that note, it's probably important to talk about what polymorphism is. In plain English, it's an object that has more than one form. Well, what that means in the developer world is that the subclasses do all the work, not the client or the calling code. This adheres nicely to a concept called information expert, and we'll talk about that later. So to maybe best understand what polymorphism is, let's look at an example. This code here is not polymorphic. We have a list of animals, a cat, a dog, and an armadillo, and we loop through them. And in each loop we detect what type of animal, and we write to the console how that animal speaks. Now, in this version, if we wanted to add a mouse, we could simply add another if statement. Will that work? Well, not exactly yet. We have to remember to add mouse to the end of our list here. Now will it work? Well, still not yet. We have to remember to update 3 to 4. And will it work now? It turns out it will work, but there's a bug. Can you spot the copy-paste error? Well, it turns out when I created the armadillo line, I copied it from the cat line. So we have the armadillo saying meow. That's possibly right. I don't know how an armadillo talks, but I doubt it's meow. So let's take a look at the polymorphic version. We get our list of animals, we loop through them, and we ask the animal itself to speak. We don't know how many animals there are, what type it is, or how they speak, and we don't care, and that's good. We ask the animal itself to speak. That's the information expert. The animal knows how to speak, so it will do it. Now, if we want to add a mouse, you ready? Did you notice the difference? Probably not, because there was no change. That's the beauty, that's the elegance of polymorphism. There's no change to this code by adding a mouse. Either version will give us the same output, a meow, a bark, a moo, and a squeak, assuming an armadillo moves. And in the non-polymorphic version, imagine how that would look. We already have 4 if statements. Imagine how that would look if we had 50 animals, or even 500. That would get pretty ugly. And in the polymorphic version, no change, no matter how many animals we add or even subtract. The Dunning-Kruger effect fits nicely with what we're trying to do here. It states that unskilled individuals mistakenly rate their ability much higher than average. It's this inability to recognize our mistakes or what we don't know that prevents or delays us from reaching that next level. As a developer, you have a nice box of if statements and you use that to solve your problems. But there's a wall there, and we don't see all the great ideas on the other side of that wall because, well, we have our if statements and they work. The reason this is important to me is I spent the first 8 years of my career programming alone. I had no mentors, I had no teammates to tell me, you're doing it wrong, or hey, here's a better way to do things. There were no blogs or podcasts, or if there were, I didn't know about them back then. I would simply open the form load method and start coding. And 500, 1,000, 5,000 lines later, I was done. And I probably violated every best practice known to software development. But I was happy. I had my box of if statements, and it worked. But you could argue, I got the job done. Why code it a different way? Well, what I did was fine for small projects, but it doesn't scale well, and there are long-term maintainability issues. So with a little effort, if we use our if statements, our box of if statements as a stepping stone and look over that wall, we can see a world of best practices and better ideas to help us become more advanced developers. Why care? Well, the best programmers aren't marginally better than merely good ones. They're an order of magnitude better. So if you would like to be a developer that is an order of magnitude better, well, let's keep going and see where this takes us. So some common beginner trends. If you see a lot of if and switch statements, if you see long methods with repeated code, if you see something like max value equals 22, and if you're wondering what's wrong with that, well, stay tuned, we'll talk about it. String n equals Joe. Okay, we'll talk about that as well. Not using analysis tools that are provided for you. Many of us use Visual Studio. There are great tools in there to help us improve our code. There's a great metric called cyclomatic complexity. We'll get into that. That tells us how complex our code is. And cross-cutting concerns embedded directly within our business logic. Okay, let's look at some code. We'll talk about business rules without polymorphism and then with polymorphism. So our problem here that we're going to solve is that we have a widget, and we're going to cycle through some rules and determine if we can approve the widget. And just to get an idea of what we're dealing with here, our widget has 5 properties, an ID, a process code, and so forth. And then there's a constructor that will populate those properties. So the first thing we'll do is we'll take a look at our non-polymorphic way of solving this. In non-polymorphic versions of coding, you'll typically see a lot of if statements. And in here, we have 4 of them. If widget.processCode is 2112 or 1974, then we won't approve it. Same thing if the widget isn't enabled. And 2 more, if the widget's not 7 days old, we won't approve it, or if the widget has any defects, we won't approve it. That's the typical non-polymorphic way to solve this. And there's an if statement at the bottom that if we can approve it, we'll call perform approval, and if we don't approve it, then we'll let the user know. So how would we solve this then in our polymorphic version? Well, this should look familiar. We loop through our rules, just like we loop through our animals, and we call rule.rulePasses, giving it a widget, and we let the rules themselves tell us, do you pass? If you don't, then we return false and we're done. If we get through all the rules and none of them return false, then we return true and it's approved. And the way this happens, the structure, what that looks like, is we have our approval rules. We have an interface of iApprovalRule, and that simply has one method called rulePasses. And there are 4 rules that implement iApprovalRule. And to take a look at one, number of defects rule, that implements iApprovalRule, and it also implements the method rulePasses. And we simply return widget.number of defects equals 0. So why don't we run this and see how that looks. We run this program, we're on our rules here, and we have 4 of them, and if we step into this, if rule.rulePasses widget, if we step into it, we'll see that we're in our number of defects rule, and the number of defects is indeed 0, so it's going to return true and move to the next rule. Now we're going to step into our next rule, which is the process code rule, and this should look familiar. You can see 2112 and 1974. That's not the case, so we'll return true here as well. And we keep going into our next rule, which step into our start date rule. That also returns true. And finally, we're going to go into our widget enabled rule, and that returns false, so it doesn't pass. Widget not approved. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Okay, so why did we do all this? And how would we make this happen from a high level? Well, if we have our business logic in the client, we would create server code or some common code, an area to move the business logic. Now what does that get us? Well, first our client has to call the server code. That doesn't get us anything, but that's simply a call to the server code, to the business logic, instead of having it in the client itself. That gives us reuse. Many clients can now reuse this same business logic. And when I say clients, I don't necessarily mean a Windows Forms client or WPF for a website services could be calling this business logic as well. We can also draw a line of trust around our business logic and only allow certain users to access it. And maintainability. Now our code is more maintainable because we've operated this way. So again, my name is Bob Horn, and I would like to thank you for watching Beyond Beginner series.